Can we talk a little bit about your environmental activism? Because that's how people, so many people who might not be as entrenched in televisions and movies know you anyway. You had your own reality show with the four-scene wife, beautiful wife Rochelle Carson, called Living with Ed, which was about you having your quest to have a smaller footprint and her being more nor like an average person who wasn't as buying into all your ideas about how to live lower on the waste chain, right? The
Right.
consumption.
Yeah.
So tell us what was it that you said for veganism, what inspired you was the documentary. Share with the audience what inspired you to really commit to being to an environmentalist and walking your talk.
I remember it vividly. It was 1970. It was the first Earth Day. And I asked somebody who was organizing the thing down Pershing Square downtown. I said, "What? This is a great celebration. I'm glad to be part of it. But what are we going to do the other 364?
Uh-huh.
What's the plan here? Do you guys have a plan?" I said, "Absolutely. We're going to clean up the air. We're going to clean up the water." So I extended my hand and said, "You got a deal, pal. I want to help you." Because I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, bit of time in New York, but out in the valley a lot of the time, certainly every summer in the valley. And it was horrible, choking smog back then in Alexandria, just the 50s and 60s and continuing through the 70s and a bit,
And the
still pretty,
80s.
in the
No,
80s,
no.
are still
I
very bad.
remember
You
being in
remember
the valley. I remember
horrible,
being in the valley and driving in a September. That was the worst month. Driving
horrible.
and it hurt your lungs to inhale
It did.
um, in the valley. And so the air has gotten cleaner. But go ahead.
Yeah. So I shook his hand when he told me they're going to clean up the air and also clean up the water because I'd seen the pictures of the Cuyahoga River catching fire near Cleveland. And I thought that's kind of a bad sign when rivers are catching fire, you know, that was bad. And then the Santa Barbara oil spill, I was here in California for that to see that nightmare. So I went clean up the air, clean up the water. You got a friend here. And I started to do everything I can that I could afford. And that's the most important
Mm.
thing I want to say to your viewers and listeners out there. It was all within the realm of the possible. It wasn't like what I wanted was a fancy electric car and solar panels, solar electric on my roof. I couldn't afford anything like that. In 1970, solar electric panels were super expensive and hard to find. But I did what I could. I rode my bike. I'd always ridden my bike. I had a paper route with my bike, but I rode it even more. I always took the bus. I took it even more. Pardon me. I took public transportation, rode my bike. I started recycling. I became a vegetarian. I started making compost in my apartment. I was in an apartment. I made it in like a diaper pail with a lid on it. And I took it out and I thought, wait a minute, I made this compost. Now what am I going to do with it?
Right.
I didn't think to grow some cherry tomatoes in the window. So I used to go out, see if anybody's looking. I'd bury it near the railroad tracks. There's still railroad tracks where the busway is in the San Fernando Valley now off Chandler Boulevard. I would bury it there just to return it to the earth. I was making my little gesture, my electric car, taking this diaper pail and emptying the stuff. And here's what happened next. It was miraculous to me. These tomatoes started to grow. There's tomato seeds in my compost. And as
Oh
you've
my
seen this
God.
happen many times yourself, those volunteer plants started to come up and there was enough rainfall, what have you, the first few months of this deposit of compost near the railroad tracks. And tomato plants grew. I did nothing to cultivate them. I didn't put any plant food on them. I didn't put any crawling, kind of trellis work around it. They came and I ate a few of the tomatoes that weren't bad. Total neglect tomatoes, and they were still good. Made for just digging a hole and putting compost in. I went, one day, I'm going to have a house. And the most important thing I want to have from that house is I want a vegetable garden. Not just for me, because one day I want to have a family, I want to have kids, and I want to show them, the most important thing I want to show them, that food did not come from the Ralph's bush or the Safeway tree. It comes from
Right.
good, healthy soil and water and sunlight and clean air, clean water, of course, not just water, but clean water. And so I'm going to do everything I can to get to that point. One day I did realize that dream, but that's what got me going was the negative of the smog and the water
Mhm.
pollution and the positive of doing these things and all of which saved me money. And my dad too. My dad was a conservative that liked to conserve. We turned off the lights, turned off the water. We saved string. We saved tinfoil. He was the son of Irish immigrants. He lived through the Great Depression. So we had this,
Yeah.
though he didn't use the word environmentalist much, he was one and gave that gift to me from the other side of the aisle, a different kind of Republican than what we know today.
Mhm.
a guy that really cared about the earth and did the action to support it, a working man that supported unions. He was a great man, my dad, and I miss him still.
Mm-hmm.
He died. I'm sorry, I forgot the most important part of that. He died within a few days of the first Earth Day. So I did a lot of this stuff to honor him as much as anything.
That's beautiful, I'm sure. Yeah. It's like a celebration to him. So you did eventually have the funds to get a EV, right?
Yeah.
And you went to the red carpet. Alexandra remembers you going to the red carpet event on your bike.
I did. I used to do all that.
I used to see him. I remember. So this is like me falling in love even more with Ed. He walked in and it's a gala and there's, everyone's at their finest. And he comes in a tux, of course, but also he's still got his helmet on his head and he's looking for the bathroom so he can kind of just, take it off and
that's right. Freshen up. Oh my God, you remember that? I love you so much.
Of course I do. Yes, I think it was the Genesis Awards or something, but
it was. My God, it was the Genesis Award. What a memory you have. I went to the Oscars more than once on my bike.
Yes, there's pictures on the internet of you going to the Oscars. And you also took Annette Bening to the Oscars when she was nominated in your electric car.
How great is that woman to put up with me to get in that wacky electric car? It was a gull wing door. Only a yoga master could get in and out of it with a dress. And fortunately, she is that. And she just got nominated today, you may have heard, for an Academy Award for Best Actress in that wonderful movie, Naiad, about Diane Naiad. Thank God.
Oh, it was
she goes
so
to the podium
good.
this year. She is the greatest, one of the greatest actors that we've known in my lifetime. I love her so much.
Yeah, she was great in that. She was fantastic.
She's great in everything.